15 years. 15 long years. Did anyone ask for this? Duke Nukem Forever is one of the most infamous games ever. If development hell could take a physical form, it would be this game. It's gained a reputation as one of the most disappointing sequels in gaming history. I'm not going to get into all the development history of Duke Nukem Forever. Go somewhere else. That's not what this video is about. No, today, what I want to do is go back and see if Duke Nukem Forever is truly deserving of its lackluster reputation. Or if it's an unfairly maligned masterpiece. It could be. So, a little backstory. Duke Nukem 3D is a first-person shooter developed for MS-DOS. Along with Doom and Wolfenstein, it's one of the early FPSs that helped define the genre. But what separates Duke from his contemporaries is the vulgar humor.
I ought to break a broom handle off in your ass. Babes, bullets, bombs. Damn, I love this job. I love the smell of bird crap in the morning.
Duke Nukem is a parody of over-the-top manly action heroes from the 80s, and the game makes frequent pop culture references, including to the very movies and characters it's influenced by. We're not going to talk about the original Duke Nukem. We're just not. It doesn't exist. Anyway, the point is, Duke Nukem 3D was successful enough that a sequel was announced a year after. We all know how that went. What makes a game outdated? I ask because one of the biggest criticisms of Duke Nukem Forever is that the humor and gameplay was outdated. 2011 was kind of a renaissance for FPS games. This is the era when Call of Duty was at the peak of its power after all. I mean, between COD and Halo and Gears of War, fans of shooters were certainly not starved for good games. A sequel to Duke Nukem should have been a slam dunk, regardless of how long it took to come out. So why was it so roundly rejected? Well, it's been 13 years. I think that's enough time for a reappraisal. Duke Nukem Forever starts out with Duke, world-famous celebrity, going on a talk show before aliens invade. 10 out of 10. No notes. That's the first thing I noticed right out of the gate, just how meta and self-referential this game is. Like everyone, I've grown increasingly tired of meta humor, but for some reason I actually like the meta humor in this game. On the subject of the opening, however, I want to start off with a critique. That being that I found the opening of the game to be a bit confusing gameplay-wise. Maybe that's just me being dumb, but I had a lot of difficulty figuring out what to do and where to go. And there's a few points later in the game like that as well. But despite that, the game never feels too difficult or impossible to navigate. Rarely did I truly get stuck on a part, and when I did, it didn't take very long to figure out what to do. Something that's helped by the explorability of the levels. It might not seem like much, but the ability to interact with objects really makes a difference here. Besides the gameplay utility, it also just makes the world feel alive and lived in. The game gives you a lot of freedom when it comes to what objects and parts of the environment you can interact with, and it rewards that curiosity. You have to explore in order to progress, so it's in your best interest to interact with the environment as much as possible. One of my favorite examples of this is that you can actually pick up the enemy's guns, and during especially tense fights when you're running low on ammo, this is a godsend. Gameplay-wise, you're mostly shooting, but there are a few sections or parts of the game where you're expected to do something more involved. And holy shit, fuck the goddamn driving in this game. The controls for these segments are ass. It feels like I'm steering the car through an ocean of molasses. I like these non-shooting segments in theory, but so many of them are driving related, and I just found them more annoying than anything. The main part of the game, that being the shooting, is fun. There's a variety of guns, but the real fun is in the finishing move, where you get to absolutely curb stomp the enemies with a perfectly timed button press. This move is just so satisfying to pull off. Mwah. Other than the car, the controls are pretty good. I never felt like my failure in any instance was an issue of control, or that things were too rigid or complicated. In fact, just overall, I think that Duke Nukem Forever is incredibly balanced in terms of difficulty. No matter how hard a challenge might be, it never feels impossible or unfair. The game is just annoying enough challenge-wise that you want to keep playing, or at least I did. Every time I died, I immediately wanted to get back up and try again, and I think that's the hallmark of any good game. But what's a Duke Nukem game without the humor? Not that. Obviously, we're never gonna agree on what's funny or not, but for my immature ass, this totally does it for me.
Look at my ass. Do it now.
Gotta remain professional, gotta remain professional. Mustn't fanboy, must not fanboy. But oh my god, it's Duke Nukem! I named my daughter Duquette! I even got her tiny toy rocket launchers to play with. I hope she grows up to be just like you. You should record another album.
Get off my dam.
Hell, even if the humor wasn't funny, which, I mean, they can't all be winners, but even then, it's such a core part of the game, and it just adds so much charm to the experience. Sure beats the hell out of the other joyless brown shooters we get. I think, overall, while Duke Nukem Forever is by no means a perfect game, it's a pretty goddamn good one, and a pretty goddamn fun one. Certainly not deserving of the harsh ribbing it's gotten. So I want to come back to the question of what makes the game outdated. I read a lot of reviews for Duke Nukem Forever, and a lot mentioned either the gameplay, the graphics, the humor, or all three being outdated. They speak about how the game has failed to catch up with the times, how it feels anachronistic in a sea of CODs and Halos. And yeah, in comparison to more modern shooters, DNF is absolutely outdated. But 13 years on, holy shit, 2011 was over a decade ago. What the fuck? And I think those aspects are more charming. If you're the kind of person who enjoys boomer shooters, you'll probably enjoy DNF. I think what it comes down to is that whether or not a game is outdated depends entirely on your perception, what you expect from it. You could say that Duke Nukem Forever is behind the times, or you could look at it as a throwback that was intentionally made that way. As well, 15 years is a long time. People change, grow, and evolve, their tastes change. The original fans of Duke Nukem 3D grew up, and were disappointed when a sequel to a game they played over a decade ago was faithful to the original. And the people who'd only known the new stuff were put off by the older style. It really is a lose-lose situation because these people aren't being unreasonable, they're just being honest. And I think that time has been a lot kinder to DNF, as ironically, it's now old enough to be nostalgic. And I also think that the datedness of the game makes it unique among its contemporaries. It's not COD, it's not Gears of War, it's its own thing. There are plenty of generic shooters out there, but there's only one Duke Nukem Forever.
Hail to the king, baby.